He was a two-time WWF champion and a two-time WCW World Heavyweight Champion, a man whose intensity made him one of the most magnetic and feared figures of the 90s wrestling boom. They called him Sid Justice, Psycho Sid, and Sid Vicious. He was, in his own words, the master and ruler of the world. For decades, despite a resume that dwarfed many Hall of Fame inductees, WWE refused to give him his place among the immortals. Many believed it was personal, a grudge held by the company and perhaps by Vince McMahon himself that would never fade. But then, on August 26, 2024, Sid Vicious died at the age of 63 after a battle with cancer. And suddenly, WWE was ready to honor him. They waited until he was dead, and then they gave him an induction that his own family would label a final, bitter betrayal. This wasn't a celebration. It was a rushed, posthumous footnote, a legacy induction his own son called straight up disappointing and disrespectful as hell. This is the story of how WWE allegedly shortchanged one of its most unique champions one last time, proving that in wrestling, some grudges last even beyond the grave. To understand the betrayal, you first have to understand the man. Sid Vicious was a physical specimen, a giant who moved with the frightening agility of a man half his size. He first gained national exposure in WCW as one half of the towering tag team The Skyscrapers, alongside Dan Spivey. He was even briefly a member of the legendary Four Horsemen, a testament to the potential industry veterans saw in him. But Sid was never meant to be a supporting player. In 1991, he jumped to the World Wrestling Federation and was immediately positioned as a major star. As Sid Justice, he was cast as the Stoic Enforcer, a special guest referee who eventually became an ally to the biggest star in the universe, Hulk Hogan. The Machine was behind him, but with Sid, loyalty was always temporary. The first great betrayal of his career came at the 1992 Royal Rumble. After being cleanly eliminated by his supposed friend Hulk Hogan, Sid snapped. He grabbed Hogan and unceremoniously dumped him over the top rope, turning his back on the fans and revealing the vicious, selfish monster that would come to define his career. The turn was electric, setting up a WrestleMania main event against Hogan. However, behind the scenes, frustration was mounting, and Sid abruptly quit the company. It was a pattern that would haunt his legacy. After a brief stint away, Sid returned to the WWF in 1995, not as a hero, but as the hired muscle for the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels. At WrestleMania 11, he stood guard as Michaels challenged Diesel for the WWF Championship. When Michaels lost, Sid's loyalty once again expired. The following night on Monday Night Raw, he brutally turned on Michaels, delivering 3 devastating powerbombs that cemented his new persona, Psycho Sid. This was Sid at his most terrifying and his most successful. With his wild eyes, unhinged promos, and overwhelming power, Psycho Sid became a main event attraction. At Survivor Series in 1996, he reached the pinnacle, defeating Shawn Michaels to win his first WWF Championship. He would capture the title a second time from Bret Hart in 1997, just before WrestleMania 13. He main evented 2 WrestleManias, held the top title in the industry on multiple occasions, and was a legitimate draw in an era of giants. But his reputation for being unreliable and politically difficult followed him. His departures were often abrupt, and his alliances, both on-screen and off, seemed to have an expiration date. He was a master of betrayal in his storylines, turning on Hogan and Michaels, the 2 biggest stars of their respective eras. These moments made him a superstar, but they also painted the picture of a man who played by his own rules, a perception that would have long-lasting consequences. Sid eventually returned to WCW, where he once again captured their World Heavyweight Championship twice, but his full-time career would come to a horrific and symbolic end at the Sin pay-per-view on January 14, 2001. In a moment that lives in infamy, Sid leaped from the second rope to deliver a big boot to Scott Steiner. His legs snapped grotesquely upon impact. It was an injury so gruesome that television networks refused to replay it. The night his career effectively died was also a night that symbolized the death of WCW itself, which would be purchased by WWE just 2 months later. For the next 2 decades, Sid's name became a topic of debate among wrestling fans. He was a multi-time world champion in both major companies, a WrestleMania main eventer, and a memorable character. By any reasonable metric, he was a Hall of Famer. Yet, year after year, the call never came. In an interview before his death, Sid himself speculated that it was because Vince McMahon personally disliked him. For over 20 years, the silence from WWE was deafening. On August 26, 2024, Sid Vicious passed away. Tributes poured in from friends, fans, and colleagues who remembered his intensity and charisma. And then, finally, WWE came calling. On March 24, 2026, it was announced that Sid would be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. But there was a catch. He wasn't receiving a full induction. He was being relegated to the legacy wing. The 2026 Hall of Fame ceremony took place in Las Vegas. Inductees like AJ Styles and Stephanie McMahon got the full treatment: a grand entrance, a heartfelt speech from an inductor, and a moment on stage to have their careers celebrated. Dennis Rodman, a celebrity inductee, had merchandise filling the gift shop. For Sid and fellow legacy inductee Bad News Brown, there was nothing. No one was given time to speak on their behalf. Their families, who had been flown to Vegas for the event, were shown on camera for a few seconds in the crowd after a brief video package played. There was no stage time, no speech, no honor. For a man who main evented WrestleMania, it was the equivalent of a historical footnote. The insult was not lost on Sid's family. His son, Gunnar Udy, took to social media to voice his disgust. "Last night's so-called Hall of Fame induction for my father was straight up disappointing and disrespectful as hell," he wrote. "I'm glad my dad was big enough to put himself over even in death, because WWE damn sure wouldn't." Gunnar detailed the experience, noting the complete lack of promotion for his father in Las Vegas and the absence of a single piece of Sid merchandise, while the store was loaded with all the Dennis Rodman crap you could want. He described the feeling that WWE had just swept him under the rug like a footnote, rushing to get him out of the way. It felt less like an honor and more like an obligation, fulfilled with the absolute minimum effort. It's a bitter pill to swallow for the family of a man who gave his body to the business. What do you think? Was the legacy induction a fitting way to honor past stars, or was it a deliberate and final act of disrespect towards a controversial figure? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy these deep dives into wrestling history, make sure to subscribe for more. Gunnar Udy suggested that maybe if they had waited another 20 years for Sid's jealous, insecure ex-colleagues to be gone, his father would have gotten the full induction he deserved. It's a sad and cynical thought, but one that hangs heavy over this entire affair. In the end, Sid Vicis's family received his Hall of Fame ring, a physical object they can hold on to. But the ceremony itself felt hollow. The Legacy Wing, originally created to honor pioneers from wrestling's early days, was used to posthumously induct a main event star of the modern era in a way that felt dismissive. For a career built on shocking betrayals, perhaps it was a strangely fitting end. WWE waited until Sid Vicious was dead, and in the eyes of his family, they betrayed his legacy one final time, confirming that for better or for worse, Sid would always be the ultimate wrestling outlaw, even in death.